You feel it in the air, the buzz, the excitement. You feel the energy of your friends, your family, people you've never even met all around you as you scream and dance along to your favorite songs. This experience that you feel, it's not the feeling of just any concert. It's the feeling of belonging, of truly connecting with your community. And in that moment, you realize that you've never felt more connected. Today, our team is proud to present a strategy that can connect more people to this 88 Rising community, and it's all thanks to the Rise to the World stage strategy. This is accomplished through 88 Expand, which will bring the company into the gaming sphere, and 88 Experience, which will bring artists that reflect your broader community in an engaging manner. But before we get further into the solution, let's take a step back and understand the current situation of your company. We recognize that 88 Rising is looking to grow and expand, but the best direction for effective expansion is always difficult to ascertain. And that's why the key question asked was, should 88 Rising remain a niche player with a strong brand image or diversify and risk diluting its brand? And this is especially important considering the significance of the 88 Rising brand, something that I'll touch on shortly. But before we can tackle this big question, first we have to truly understand what 88 Rising's brand really is. So let's take a closer look. At first glance, it's fair to say that 88 Rising has positioned itself as the brand synonymous with hip hop for Asian Americans. It's important to recognize that this demographic is very unique. They have strong ties to both their Asian and American backgrounds, resulting in this group having their unique culture through a combination of values from both cultures, as well as emergent values by identifying in their community. So by focusing on artists with the same experience, 88 Rising has been able to stand out from other labels. Now that we looked at the label from a listener's perspective, let's look at it from an artist's perspective. 88 Rising has been able to pull in iconic and loyal artists for its brand, even with other major players in the record label industry. The primary differentiating factor for 88 Rising is the strong community behind the brand as a whole. By leaning into and emphasizing its unique culture, artists have the space to pursue their own music and how it authentically relates to their own culture and experience, with the support of a community of artists and managers that feel the same. In contrast, most of Sony or Universal, some key competitors, their acquisitions don't have this consistent community. They're more focused on capitalizing in the market as opposed to providing this same communal experience. So the support and expertise 88 Rising gives artists is also a major draw. The strong integration of 88 Rising's artists into their social media channels, their live events, collaborations with other artists, and pertinent channels means that 88 Rising is equivalently associated with uplifting the success and growth of an artist's own brand as a whole, even outside of the music that they produce. The thing is though, as time has passed, 88 Rising has evolved from what it was before. It's not simply about hip hop for a specific audience. 88 Rising has become a group that highlights Asian youth culture in general. And this is really important to note because it means that 88 Rising is actually appealing to a much wider audience than they initially thought was possible. But first, why exactly is this the case? To illustrate this point, you have to look no further than the successful artists on their current roster. For example, artists like Nicki and Joji are known for their R&B and pop-infused music. And Rich Brian, who started off with rap, has embraced more R&B influenced music. Clearly, rap is not the only draw bringing Asian Americans to 88 Rising. Even Head in the Clouds, 88 Rising's flagship concert, featured K-pop and J-pop artists. You mentioned that recording stopped. Okay, I'll continue. Even Rich Brian, one of 88 Rising's first artists, didn't even set foot in America until he started touring. Yet, he was able to appeal to and relate with Asian American audiences simply through a shared cultural experience that wasn't contingent on him growing up in America. So all these factors really prove why the current strengths and direction of the company don't just appeal to Asian Americans interested in hip hop. It resonates with Asians entrenched in American youth culture in general, what we'll refer to as Asian youth culture from now on. It's important to recognize the start of this shift has already occurred in the company. Yet, even though it is happening, 88 Rising still connects with that initial niche of Asian Americans interested in hip hop. They still have acts that focus on rap, and facts of the genre have not started to feel disconnected with the direction of the company. After all, while 88 Rising is diversifying, it's staying true to what the actual draw of the company is, appealing to Asian youth culture. So it's evident that 88 Rising can serve more than what their perceived niche is. Thus, the initial problem statement is inaccurate. Instead of asking whether they should keep their brand image or dilute it, 88 Rising should instead ask, how can they cater to their actual brand identity by targeting markets of Asians exposed to American culture? In other words, how can they best appeal to Asian youth culture in general? This is a large market, so by successfully appealing to this group, 88 Rising has a better avenue for sustainable growth. It's important to recognize that this broader target market is broader than what 88 Rising was intentionally serving. This broader group has more diverse interests and backgrounds as well. Thus, in order to bring more of this broad group and resonate with their unique considerations, you'll have to put some extra effort. So with this in mind, we're so proud to present Rising to the world stage, a solution that'll allow you to connect to this broader audience. First through 88 Expand, which will expand your brand into the gaming sphere. And then secondly, through 88 Experience, which will broaden the diversity of your artist ensemble to fit your diverse listening base in an engaging strategy. Kanish, how about you walk us through the first solution?
Thank you, Charlie. So, based on our prior analysis, 88 Rising shouldn't simply begin to embrace music genres beyond rap. They should embrace all the creative outlets and elements of Asian youth culture that have made 88 Rising so successful. Whether it's fashion and clothing or new styles of art, 88 Rising has had a finger on the pulse of Asian youth culture and should continue to expand to include all of these areas. As a result, the brand should change to better align its customer perception with what the brand actually entails. On top of expanding their marketing to existing product lines, such as clothing and jewelry, 88 Rising should grow towards areas that are currently unaddressed to attract new customers and grow the reach of 88 Rising. We need a market that is popular amongst the Asian demographic and has room to grow, and gaming makes the most sense. So let me show you why. So there are a few main reasons that we believe gaming is extremely important. There are 3.6 billion people that play video games worldwide, with 50% of the players being Asian. In addition, roughly 50% of these gamers are between 18 and 23, with 31% between the ages of 24 and 29, which are the exact demographics that 88 Rising is aiming to appeal to. Finally, in terms of raw eyes on the space, there were over 618 million people watching competitive gaming and esports in 2021. Gaming is a massive part of culture in Asia, especially since 47% of all the global spending on video games comes from Asia. This provides an avenue for 88 Rising to expand their reach by focusing on their established niche. From preteens to employed adults, there's always a place for video games. Therefore, we believe that 88 Rising should partner with a game or platform to boost their reach into audiences that might not be exposed to the label organically. This will drive greater user awareness and even has the possibility of providing alternative sources of revenue through monetization within these games. But before we get into any of these specifics, we need to identify what companies we believe would be the best to partner with and why. So, while we have considered other games and platforms, we believe that League of Legends has the best alignment with our target demographic. With 152 million active monthly players, with 110 billion from China and Southeast Asia alone, we believe that this will be the perfect platform to communicate 88 Rising's appeal to a wider population that hasn't currently been addressed. As Charu mentioned earlier, Asian youth culture refers to Asians all around the world that have been exposed to American culture, which would make Southeast Asia a perfect initial target market. This means that League of Legends will be a great platform for collaboration to drum up renewed interest in 88 Rising. Additionally, there's also precedent for musical collaborations with famous contemporary artists such as Lil Nas X partnering with these game platforms to perform songs to 400 million viewers during the World Finals, which is 4 times as many as the Super Bowl. So, now that we've identified who we'll be partnering with, let's identify what this partnership will look like and how it can benefit both parties. 88 Rising will partner with the League of Legends platform to create music to perform during the major halftime show at the main international competition hosted by League of Legends, along with some promotional videos and in-game items to ensure there's consistent awareness of this partnership. This is shown to be extremely successful and has even been a capstone for many individual artists. When paired with the authenticity and the relatability that 88 Rising brings to the table, we believe that this will significantly increase interest in the label and bring a new audience to 88 Rising while maintaining their appeal to the Asian American market. Additionally, there are a variety of benefits for League of Legends. On top of the partnership fee, they will gain new avenues for in-game monetization through microtransaction sales within the game, which is the primary method by which League of Legends gains revenue. On top of this, collaborations tend to generate renewed interest in the game. When paired with the demographic alignment and the increase in user base available to buy these microtransactions, this partnership will benefit both League of Legends and 88 Rising. So now that we've gone through how we're planning on increasing the audience of 88 Rising through addressing new markets, I'll pass it off to Amy to show how 88 Rising can attract and retain new talent and listeners.
Thank you, Kanish. This brings us to the second part of the Rising to the World Stage solution, where we're excited to introduce 88 Experience, a new audition program that both attracts and retains unique voices to the 88 Rising family. The 88 Experience strategy aims to raise talent from a broader target group, giving equal access opportunity to populations who have struggled with fair representation in the past. The strategy will allow a greater number of emerging artists to connect with and relate to 88 Rising as a brand. 88 Experience will draw artists from three key demographics, the first of which are the underrepresented populations from within South and Southeast Asia. We want to hear more voices from those born within Asia's geography, both cross-cultural experiences. Artists such as Rich Brian were raised in Western Jakarta, and the experiences he brings in his music set him apart compared to his Western artists. That's why we want to explore these South and Southeast Asian geographies and give voice to more underrepresented populations in the hope that one of them may be heard atop 88 Rising stage. We also want to look into low access and limited opportunity migrant diaspora populations. Similar to the reasoning as it applies to the Asian population centers, 88 Experience will focus on diaspora populations whose voices have not been given a presence on the world stage. Lastly, we also want to investigate into large population centers with a strong Asian heritage. Cities like Richmond, Vancouver on the west coast of Canada have an over 80% Southeast Asian population and a robust culture that's unafraid of change. And thus, they are perfect for the 88 Experience program, from which 88 Rising management advertises to these populations. And after considering the recruits' demos and portfolios, they're invited to the social media candidate selection process. 88 Experience is thus an opportunity for listeners to actively engage with the selection process of the artists they're exposed to, while also picking the next generation of 88 Rising artists. To give you an idea of what the solution looks like, let's walk through how it will look. 88 Rising begins by picking a place to run an 88 Experience audition, and it advertises it on social media channels. Participants then fill out a virtual submission and are screened by a group of judges, where they share the backstory of their life, why they want to join 88 Rising, and some of their performance notes in the past. Afterwards, select candidates are brought into an in-person venue, where they once again answer some questions and do a performance check. Following the event, 88 Rising social media team collects the best highlights from the 12 candidates and posts clips from their socials. Viewers then vote on who they like, and the top artists get announced. The winning artist is then fully onboarded to the 88 Rising program and is then trained to become a debut artist. We also want to acknowledge that the 88 Experience program is not limited to the short-term metrics of social media engagement and increased global awareness, though both of which play a key role in supporting the program. Instead, the 88 Experience program will accomplish both these things in addition to factoring in long-term considerations and providing sustainable benefits. First, the 88 Experience program will also further support talent retention, as the close ties recruits build to their fan base through the social media program incentivizes these artists to remain loyal to the 88 Rising brand. If an artist is onboarded with 88 Rising through the 88 Experience program, their individual brand personality becomes directly linked to that of their greater parent companies. This supports talent retention and incentivizes both the artists to stay affiliated with 88 Rising and for 88 Rising to equivalently respect them in return. The 88 Rising Experience format can also be replicated for things outside of music. For example, after conducting some market research, this strategy can be brought out for popular industries such as fashion and art, and further allowing 88 Rising to diversify away from music and cater to the Asian contemporary culture in general. So all in all, ultimately, the 88 Experience program allows for greater talent acquisition for both short-run growth combined with sustained talent retention for long-run stability.
Thank you, Amy. And now that we've heard about both solutions, let's look at our implementations. Well, firstly, we'll be focusing on both solutions right off the bat. This increases our initial reach and allows us to focus on the smooth rollout of the programs. With 88 Experience, we will begin by hiring new employees and working out the talent acquisition logistics. Following the setup, we will roll out and continue our program. Additionally, we will also have checkpoints to measure the impact and overall reach of 88 Experience to see if there's any changes we need to implement along the way. On the 88 Expand side, we first have to figure out the legal contracts and conduct negotiations to partner with the gaming platforms. Followed by hosting our first event in 2024, we will continually evaluate the success and implement any new changes or additions if need be for future programs and events. Now off to Amy for some more important considerations.
Of course, no solution is perfect. And so we must work to proactively address each potential risk and work to mitigate them early on. One such risk of relative impact and likelihood is a potential backlash and resistance from the existing fan base. Though the fan base as a whole will quickly adopt and adapt to 88 Rising's new brand portrayal, we must continue to account for those who are more resistant to this change. To do so, 88 Rising must prioritize transparent communication with the existing fan base. By sharing the vision and goals of the brand's expansion and emphasizing the commitment to preserving the core values and culture that attracted the fan base initially, we may ensure that the bulk of the fan base grows smoothly while with 88 Rising in this transitionary period. Another potential risk is competitor response. As 88 Rising expands its reach, it may face increased competition for audiences from other media platforms and labels targeting the Asian youth culture market. To mitigate such a thing, 88 Rising should continue to differentiate itself by staying true to its authentic approach, fostering strong artist-community relationships, and leveraging its existing fan base and social media presence. That way, 88 Rising can stay unique and profitable in an ultra-competitive industry. A third risk our team has assessed is that of talent retention. With the growth of the Asian music and entertainment industry, there's a risk of losing key artists to rival labels and platforms. In response, 88 Rising should continue to prioritize artist support and development. By building strong relationships with artists, offering competitive contracts, and fostering a sense of community, 88 Rising can retain the talent that keeps the brand running. Should these risks be addressed early on, we foresee great success with the 88 Rising to the world strategy. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let me finally pass it back to Kareem, who will give you the financial breakdowns that make the solution possible.
Thank you, Amy. So in a nutshell, our solution generates over $5.5 million of NPV whilst increasing our reach by 69 million people. This is captured by both our 88 Experience and 88 Expand growth streams. In these streams, the majority of revenues are generated by the new talent acquisition program, which not only increases the participants and therefore listeners of 88 Rising, but also increases potential revenue sources with the new artists that will partner with 88 Rising. However, since artist growth is the integral catalyst for our overall revenue growth, I will dive into that at a deeper level. Considering that the average revenue per artist in 88 Rising is around $700,000, we need to make sure to understand that the new artists will have difficulty maintaining similar levels of engagement, which is why we assume a 30% reach compared to the average 88 Rising artist. Additionally, with the increasing reach of our 88 Expand solution, we will be able to create new songs with the gaming partnerships and therefore new revenue streams for our newly onboarded artists. This will also act as a key growth driver for our new artists. Overall, our solution brings over $11 million in revenues in 5 years. Now to fund our solution, we will be investing less than $5 million over the 5-year horizon. The costs can be seen at our pie chart, which breaks down the main sectors. Most of the costs are taken up by our 2 solutions and the new marketing expenses. Importantly, the key cost drivers for 88 Expand come from the gaming partnership costs, while new employee hirings, equipment, and studio rentals drive the 88 Experience cost projections. For the sake of increased accuracy, we also accounted for sound technicians, video development costs, and social media managers, all of which are crucial to the smooth implementation of our solution. Additionally, all costs have been inflation adjusted over the course of the financial projections. So now that we've heard about how much our solution costs, it's important to remember the significance of these investments. By increasing our focus on marketing and solution implementations, we will be able to reach 69 million listeners and bring an NPV of over $5.5 million. Clearly, this is an attractive opportunity for 88 Rising. So this brings our presentation to an end, and we would like to thank you for your time. We will also open the floor to any questions you may have.
Thank you for your presentation. It is now time for the Q&A session. Please make the questions short and concise and leave your thoughts and comments for the feedback section. The 15 minutes countdown starts now. Let's hear the first question. Thank you.
I'll go first, if that's all right. So thank you, team, for the presentation. Really interesting. I have a question on your financial analysis. If you could go back to the cost breakdown slide, you had broken down the costs into, roughly a quarter 88 Experience, a third on marketing, and then 40% on 88 Expand. I had a question about operational costs. So costs of setting up the business, basically your daily operational expenses, HR, any consultancies, agencies. Where does that fit in? How would you account for that?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and that's something that we accounted for in both solutions. So on the 88 experience side, we did a lot of research into how much renting an actual studio, renting the musical equipment, and all of those small nitty-gritty costs that ultimately add up to the 23% over for the overall cost of the 88 experience. On the 88 expand side, it's more considering the legal fees, also the fees of partnering with a gaming community. So you do have to pay a licensing fee. So we are considering the small costs that then add up to the overall expenditures. And in those costs are included new social media hires. We also looked at outsourcing some marketing expenditures to countries like in Southeast Asia, which not only decreases our revenue expenditures as compared to North America, but also allows for greater reach in these markets because the social media managers and the marketing managers have a better understanding of their overall scene.
Thank you, Karim.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for that, guys. It was great. Thank you. Just one quick question. Can you expand a little bit on how the two strategies, the experience and expand strategy, how they interact with each other and how they how they inform each other and how you can make them work collectively to make the business grow?
Yeah, so I'd be happy to start that off. And if any of my colleagues like to add on, I'm more than happy to. So first of all, it's important to analyze that, yes, we're starting a new talent acquisition process and also having these partnerships with the gaming platforms, but they do work hand in hand. With the new artists that we have and also some existing top performers, we're going to be able to sort of present at these events. And that way, with the rising artists, they have a space to not only perform, but also grow their brand and their community. And also this is supported by the already huge existing artists that 88 Rising has. And now I'll pass it on to Chari to add a little bit more.
For sure. Thank you, Kareem. I think Kareem did a great job of explaining the operational capabilities, how they work. I just want to take back and take a step to understand the conceptual reasons why we did it. Ultimately, we realized that the way 88 Rising is currently operating, they're trying to target a specific niche. But in reality, they have offerings that could target the wider Asian diaspora. And that's why we're pitching solutions that's really expanding it and making it more accessible to other groups with the Asian communities that would be interested in the products we offer. That's where our first solution comes in to expand it to the gaming scene. And then our second solution, which just makes it more accessible to people in specific communities that want to see that representation. And then finally, with both of these strategies, we found unique ways to make sure that this is great advertising opportunities for 88 Rising to gain more traction in general.
Thank you.
So I've just found your appendices in the PDF file and appreciate the effort that went into doing all the work and the financials. I just wonder how you think about, or how you thought about in your brand expansion program, what kind of manpower is going to be required? You know, you talked about the incremental employees, and I see that you've got a salaries line in your total cost item. Is this a significant increase in the 200 base employees that is going to be required to implement your strategy? And also, who's going to take the lead and what's the negotiating strategy with the gaming partner? Thanks.
Yeah, so I'll start that off and then once again pass it on to any of my colleagues if they'd like to add. So it's important to note that when they did say that they had 200 employees, they said they had less than 200 employees. And we found a statistic that said that 88 Rising actually has 156 employees. So after the first year, that will increase to, I believe, 177 employees. And what this really does is a lot of these employees, first of all, come from marketing managers to then roll out the 88 Experience program. Employees on the judging side for judging the new talent acquisitions, also some employees for sound technicians. And then we are considering using 88 Rising existing legal base to then conduct some negotiations with the new gaming platforms. And we understand that from their perspective, they already know how the music labels and how some connections work. So we find it to be more cost effective and more efficient to use their existing legal base. And now I'll also pass it on to Kanish.
Yeah, I also just want to elaborate a little bit more on how these negotiations are going to work. So specifically for League of Legends, which is the example that we used, they host their final round of whatever competitive element they have in a different city every year. So this year, for example, it's planning to be South Korea. And the important thing to note is that whenever they host these competitions in different locations, they try to bring about artists for the final rounds, like music act, that essentially represents the country that they're in. So, for example, this year, they're planning on working with K-pop, which essentially means that if we get them in at a time where they're working in a city or a country, for example, Indonesia, which we already have a strong artist and audience base in, they're more likely to work with us simply because it follows the previous trend of what they've been doing historically. And they're more incentivized to essentially provide representation to the country in which they're hosting the event.
Thank you.
I've just got to ask on these numbers. I mean, that you've there's a lot of diligence obviously that's gone into this, and they're quite precise. So where did you source these from? Are these sort of, have you used sort of existing examples to build these and work through them?
Yeah, so as you can see here on our assumptions, a lot of these numbers actually came from sources that we found online. So some basic ones, really just modeling out some organic growth, some inflation, that really came from the International Monetary Fund. Looking at other sort of more detailed ones, like the social media manager costs, sound technician costs, also Asian population growth rates, or average retail space cost, that's something that we modeled based on our new target country. So some of our target sort of areas, and what we looked at the cost for implementing the 88 experience program in Indonesia. So that's where we looked at the social media manager, that's where we looked at the sound technician costs, the rental costs for the new musical equipment. And we thought that that would have an accurate representation for any other Southeast Asian countries that we wanted to expand into. Also important to note that for the social media manager cost, we did take outsourced social media managers from China, which we thought would be great representation for the Asian sphere, as well as decreasing our overall expenditures.
Thanks.
We have another 6.5 minutes left. Are there any more questions?
So when you look at the two sort of strategies, where do you how does the value accretion break down? Simon asked about how the strategies are integrated, but I wonder, where's the real value accruing from?
I would love to start off by answering this, and if Kanish wants to add on, feel free. So really, a lot of the value creation is already inherent with 88 Rising's growth and trajectory as it is right now, because we know we want to acknowledge that 88 Rising began as a very Asian rap-centered business proposition, but in recent years it's grown beyond that. In recent years, it's expanded to embrace new styles and new genres of music, and what we are really proposing is to take 88 Rising along that organic and natural trajectory into growth into the Asian contemporary culture in general, so that we're encompassing and encapsulating other forms of media, such as perhaps fashion, gaming, and art, in the near future. But at the same time, we're also in the near future, we're also looking at different genres of music, so that we're not just focusing on rap, which were the origins of 88 Rising, but we're staying true to the element of Asian culture in general.
And yeah, just to very quickly add on to that, I think an important thing to note is to look at the big picture, right? So one of the big issues that 88 Rising is attempting to solve is essentially allowing people from Eastern cultures and different countries that are traditionally underrepresented in pop culture to have a stage to express their own unique worldviews in Western pop culture. So 88 Rising has been a very big force in that. I think the important thing to note is that a lot of people have rallied behind these people from Asia, whether they've immigrated, whether they've been exposed to American culture in the past. They don't necessarily see the representation they would like. And as we've seen from previous historical examples, that's a very big part of an active and committed user base. So along with the financial benefits, which Kareem has already illustrated, there's a lot of potential for 88 Rising to essentially expand their user base and the scope of people that they can reach through programs such as these, which let countries that are traditionally underrepresented, for example, Indonesia, Thailand, Cambodia, in pop culture, to essentially have a stage to express themselves and get their art out to a wider audience.
Can I ask a sort of related question too? In the analysis, you talk about collaborating with trendy brands, and you chose Porsche and Puma. I'm curious as to why you thought that those were the most relevant brands for 88 Rising.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the point here was not to illustrate that it's necessarily the most relevant, but the fact that 88 Rising is going on the process of diversifying and spreading from just music. So the example of Porsche is very far away from music, and same with Puma as well. There's some other examples I mentioned as well, such as Marvel, where they're partnering in the movie scene as well. So the idea here is just to showcase the fact that, yes, at first, your core idea was really to appeal to Asian rap, but now your platform is really expanding, your scope is expanding, and that's what's resulting in the success you have right now. And Kareem, would you like to add on?
Yeah, and just to clarify it even further, when we mentioned Porsche, Puma, and Marvel, we're looking at something that 88 Rising has done to illustrate the steps they're willing to take away from the music sphere.
So then building on that question, what would your selection criteria be when you're evaluating partners?
So I can take that. I would love to help any of my teammates add on if they need to. But primarily it's focused around areas specifically that Asian youth culture is associated with. So the examples that we've given so far, for example, fashion, art, gaming, these are all very important parts of Asian youth culture. And as someone that's grown up in Singapore, I've been exposed to that relatively frequently throughout the duration of my life. So I think in terms of what brands we want to work with, they're primarily brands that are already associated with youth culture in general, not specifically Asian. But the also other important criteria is just essentially the freedom for a sort of reinvention of the existing brand through this collaboration. So one really important thing to note is 88 Rising has already worked with fashion brands, for example, right? But all these collaborations are specifically with Asian American designers, and they essentially put their unique spin, and I get a chance to show their culture in a way that they wouldn't necessarily be able to through their regular product lines. So essentially having this flexibility to use a different platform to communicate the same ideas of 88 Rising, that would probably be the key metric that we'd look for in collaborations in these related spheres.
Okay.
Turning to risks and mitigations, I just wonder how robust do you feel that analysis is, and whether there are any other considerations that you might put out there now?
Yeah, of course. So I think, once again, I want to reiterate that with every solution, there's always going to be an inherent level of risk associated with implementing it. And so much of these risks are put in place, and these mitigations are here so that we can be proactive about how we address them. And I think that over here, we've assessed 3 key ones in terms of the competitiveness of this market and this industry in general, as well as the potential backlash of our overarching decision to really expand 88 Rising as a brand. So I think in terms of our solution, we have assessed many of the potential risks, many of the potential major risks in this brand expansion. But if we wanted to, we could also look more deeply into the specific risks associated with the geography and the 88 expansion and 88 experience programs.
Can I just ask you whether you think that the loss of their top 3 artists, which you identify as having $800,000 plus of revenue for the I guess it's 800,000 plus for the existing 17, and then the new artists, which are an important part of your continuing talent acquisition and 88 experience, right? Wouldn't the loss of a couple of the artists to Sony, who could pay them up front, be a big risk?
Sorry, we are running out of time, I'm afraid. So thank you all. The judges will now stay in the room for deliberation.